All right, welcome back everyone to this Grasshopper VRay tutorial. Now in this session what we're going to do is we'll combine all our work from the previous sessions together, which is the model, base grid, and our base mesh. What I've done in between the previous this lesson and the previous lesson is I've just rearranged some of these just so they look a little bit better. So nothing really big changed. Okay, so let's start. First off, what I'm going to do is obviously I'll make these, I'll take a couple of these and I'll drag them all the way to the other side because we will definitely need those. And obviously we'll need this one too. So I'm going to drag that one also like that. And I do need a plane. Obviously I will need the base plane. So I'll also drag that one out. And we'll start with something simple, which is just to visualize our droplets. So I'm going to hide that. What is that? Oh, that's my grid. So I'm just going to hide that with F7. There we go. Okay. Right. So we'll move these first. We'll do a move. We'll attach our model like we did as a preview. So we're going to do a vector to points. And we want to move every attach point, right, to all the starting points. Now, this is not going to be the final one. We're going to substitute it, but this is just for us to have some visual feedback of where we're going with this. We'll connect that to the T of our move, which is translate, and we'll connect our droplets model. It's going to take a while. There we go. Those are the droplets model. And now we have, I forgot to take our base mesh. So I'm just going to quickly make it one here. I'll pop it in with the next of these. And for the intersection, we'll simply use the intersect mesh. Will be this one. So if you can't find it, it's on the intersect mathematical, and it's actually called mesh ray intersection. Mesh to intersect, well, that's simple. It's going to be our base mesh. And the P will be the ray start point. Well, that's our starting points. And then we have the ray direction, which will be, let me put this one down, which will be the z-axis, but we're not seeing anything because this needs to point down. It has to be negative, -1. There we go. Now we have all the intersection. All right, now let's, oh, those are the droplets. So actually now what we can do is we replace the B input with our X input, which is the points that are now intersecting our base mesh down below. So when we do that, just a couple of seconds, there we go. All our droplets are now perfectly, well, following the wave of our base mesh. Okay. As for the string, it's actually quite simple. For the string, we'll just do a line between 2 points, and it will start from the original points to whatever point is now intersecting. So that will be our string. So let me just finish this with a mesh pipe, because for VRay to render this out, you need to give this some thickness. So I'm just going to complete that. Radius of 5. That's way too thick for a string. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a slider that's between 0.1 millimeter to 3. Let's try 1 mil. A radius of 1 mil meaning a diameter of 2. This looks okay. Well, maybe I just do 0.5. So that's actually a string of a diameter with a diameter of 1 millimeter. That should be okay. To top this off, we'll just create a custom preview. and we'll give this a slightly white color and with some transparency. I'm not even sure transparency work. Yeah, it doesn't really work with this one, but that's okay. We just need to finish that off. And now we can actually disable that, even though we spend that time. Well, whoa, since this one is taking that much time, we might wanna, well, leave to that. If that's gonna be a problem when we debug, when we animate this, we'll temporarily disable this so that it can speed things up a bit. Now moving on to the droplets themselves, we can actually do, well, we need to mesh. Well, actually, we don't need to mesh this anymore because the final one. It doesn't hurt to do a meshing. Well, actually, they are already pre-meshed, aren't they? Yeah, they're already meshed, so it doesn't really matter. So we can actually do this, and we'll give this a different color so that we can distinguish it. Since they're droplets, we'll give it a nice blue, something like that, a little bit lighter. Yeah, the transparency doesn't really do much in here, but that's okay. Okay. Now that we have that one set, we are now going to look at to animate this. Now to animation itself, base plane. Seems like I don't use this, but maybe I'll be using it later. You're right. As for the animation itself, we need to determine, we need to make sure that we can drive the animation with a single slider, right? So that you can attach this to VRay or just render out your slider or attach it to any render that you might have installed for your Rhino. So let's create that slider. We'll start from 0 and let's say we're gonna go, I don't know, 3,600 frames. So we're gonna call this current frame, right? So that you can just move this around. One easy way to do that, how we can do the animation is actually, or the idea behind it is quite simple. What we're going to do is we will move our base mesh, which is where? Which is this one. Before we let it intersect. And actually that is the trick in doing this. And this is where our base plane now comes in, because when we want to move our mesh, depending on how you have this rotated, right now we don't have this rotated, meaning it's sitting along the y-axis, right? But if you had this rotated, then you will need to rotate that also. And hence, we're using the base mesh because the base mesh comes from that rotation that we've made here, right? So we don't have to worry about whatever rotation we use. So to quickly use that, we're going to have to deconstruct the plane so that we're going to be using one of their own axis. I disabled that a little bit too fast. As you can see, what we want to animate is within the green axis, and that is our y-axis. So we'll do an amplitude. We'll attach the y to the v, this one to the move. I'm going to move the whole bunch a little bit on that side. And okay, now I don't need to see that again. The geometry to move, well, needless to say, that's going to be our mesh. And then we can attach the new moved mesh, which is now actually not really moved. Well, maybe by one. Actually, no, it's not actually moved. We can reattach this to our mesh ray intersect. It's going to take some time because I think we do need to get rid of that for now. Yeah, we'll disable that for now. We'll enable that when we're animating it. We can have this, but I don't want to see all this actually. I don't really need to see the strings. I just need to see the droplets. So we'll have that disabled as well. And as for the A, which is the amplitude, well, that is in a quick way you can attach your current frame. That's not how we're going to do it in the end, but just to show you that this will then animate. Oh, forgot to mention one thing though. I'm not sure which way it's now going. It seems to be going the right way. I think. Where's my? So if I put in, let's say I put back 0, let's align this to the bottom of my window. And if this one goes up, meaning it is moving, for example, now we're trying to determine, is it moving this direction or is it moving this direction, right? So let's see. We put 0. And it seems to be going this direction, which makes sense because, well, we just saw that the y-axis is positive, so that's not really a big surprise. All right. So what we're gonna do here, we just need to wait. Is it really moving that direction though? Oh wait. This is the good time for us to test our do not use full points, so that when we can, hopefully, don't disappoint me, show me that it's actually working. Let me see. Let me do this. I can actually just put those on. Yeah, I'm not sure if you can see that. The white one that you see here, that's the default, that's not moved. The red one is the one that's moving. So as you can see, it is moving in the positive y direction. So what we need to do is actually need to invert one of these, and we'll invert on the just before we connect it to the move. So we can right click on the V and then we say this is a minus X. So we can keep all the number before that positive, right? Because it becomes a hassle to work with. Everything has to be a negative value. Why not just invert the end results? So now it is moving that way. And we can actually, you know what? I should just take that off also. We'll take this one off. So when you animate this, voila. As you can see, it's already, you can see the droplets moving. Now, that's not really interesting because we're not moving by a lot. We're moving actually by 3,600 mil, which is not a lot at all, right? Actually, I want to see my wireframe. Here's what I'm going to do though. I am going to copy these because I want to see it. So I'm just going to quickly put this all the way up there, drag the whole bunch down, and we can see the whole thing animate. And now we have to tackle this animation frame. We have to make sure that we don't go crazy number. We don't go something like, what is this, 15,000? I don't even think the 15,000 is enough. 150,000. Let's see where that takes us. Oh, apparently 150 meters takes us about to the end. But if you continue on, things just fall apart. But we don't really want to work with these crazy numbers, right? That's not really manageable. I mean, it is, but I prefer not to. So we're gonna do something with the frame here, and we're gonna introduce some mechanics that we can use so that we can determine how fast will this go or how slow, which ultimately depends on how many frames do you want to render. So a quick way to do that will be to do a series, right? Now you might be wondering what I'm going to do with a series. Well, imagine this. Let's say that each frame here is literally, this one literally says which frame we want to render out, and then combine that frame that's being rendered out into a sequence in your favorite video editing program like Adobe Premiere or DaVinci Resolve or just anything else that you can have your hands on. What we're going to do with the series is we're going to create a series of values that ultimately dictates the move corresponding to the current frame. We're going to start with, well, we're going to start with 0. So we're going to do nothing there. But what we will do is say to the C, hey, how many frames do I want? Now you can connect the last frame here, which is 2600, to here, or you can just make your own slider, and we'll call this total frames. Put that in, and let me actually open up a panel. We'll go like this, bam. So these are the same value that you get from this slider, but here's the one that we'll do. We'll start with 30. We'll put in the stepping. As you can see, all the values not changes, and the last value we have about 108 meters. So we're gonna call this stepping speed. Now I just call it a stepping value. Yeah, that makes more sense. But how do we use this in here? We're going to just use the list item. Nothing really fancy. Well, no, the list goes in here, and we'll select from this list using the list item here, and then we can plug this one here. So now at current 0 frame, we're not doing much, but watch what happens now if I move this. You see how they're moving a lot? Oops. It seems that at frame 3600, we're looping back, so we need to make sure that, how many items do I have in here actually? I think I need to do one more. So you always have to do current frame is your, actually the total frame is the maximum frames you have plus 1, right? Or we can click on the C, and then we're gonna say X minus 1. So that the amount of values you have here correspond to amount of frames you have. Actually, I think it has to be plus 1. Because if 0 is included in here, I need to do plus 1. My apologies. It should be X plus 1. So now the last value will always correspond. See? Okay. So with that said, we still have some bit left, but that's because we what's it, multiplier? Yeah, I think it's this one. We included quite a lot, so we can actually decrease this by a little bit, maybe to 8. I mean, that rest should be okay. And let's see how it does with our manual mesh. Ooh, with a manual mesh, it's just about to the end. So I'll say this is a magic number. We'll keep it at that. I mean, 3,600 frames is a lot. If you're trying to do a video that's like 60 frames a second, and for sure you're going to slow down your video, you're probably going to have like maybe 10-20 minutes of frame time. So that's quite a lot. I would consider this enough. So let me put this back to frame 0. Where's my frame 0? Where is my whole animation? You can actually turn this off and just focus on this one. You can actually now turn on your the strength. And let's try this out with not randomize reduce. And we'll do a culling pattern a little bit less, so you can see a little bit more. Let's say 5 maybe. Yeah, 5 like that. So you can see a little bit better what's going on, right? Note that we are now using, or we are not using our manual mesh. That's okay, that's okay. So when you animate this, this is what you will see. And if you swap to your manual mesh, you'll see a lot better. I don't know what that is, so I'll disable that. Can you disable this one too? So you can play with this. You can either modify your manual mesh with the points that we've done in the previous video, or you just completely rely on the randomized mesh. So for this one, I'll leave it as the manual mesh because that one, it sort of like starts at every points are flat, and then it will do its thing, and then it will end flat again. So I prefer to have that one, even though the last few bits not really doing much, but that's okay. Right. So if you do want to have a different sampling value, meaning at every frame, more of your base mesh will be moved, then that is where you will have to change the values in order to achieve that. But I'll guess these numbers are pretty okay. So the speed up and the speed down, you can probably adjust that within Premiere or DaVinci. That's gonna offer you a lot better the next level of control in your animation. So that should be all right. All right. Now, well, this part is basically more or less the control of the animation, and this one is the brain. And the rest is controlled by those two components. Okay. Outside this one, this part is pretty much done. Oops, I think I thought my program is crashing. So this part is pretty much done. But what you can do is you can preview an animation of how that look like before you do the rest of adding lights and all that for the final render with VRay or any other render program. Is we can quickly, if you go to the current frame slider and you right click on it, you have the animate option. And what this will do, if we click on this, it will open up a dialog box. And what it does basically is it takes a screenshot of your Rhino viewport, depending on which one you have selected. So I have perspective, so that's why it's seeing the preview right here. And you can render that out and see how it looks on a sequence of images. You can even put this into DaVinci Resolve or Adobe Premiere and create an animated sequence out of that. So what we can do is we can actually try that out. One thing I do recommend you check first is probably you don't want to render all the frames because that takes quite a while depending on the resolution and your the capabilities of your machine. Because rendering these things out tends to be a little bit trickier and could crash. So either you set a appropriate frame number here. So let's say that we don't want to render the entire, how many we have here, 3,600 frames, because that's what the program will do. It will go through each time, it will +1 to the slider, and it'll take a screenshot and will save the screenshot to this location or whatever location you have selected. So we can actually do that for a trial run, although I might not render the entire 3,600 frames. I would just try to do maybe like 600. So what I'm going to do is total frames at 600 here. Well, this can be the same. I'm just going to be limiting this part. So instead of 3,600, we'll just put it to 600 so that it will just go through its thing and then do the render, and then it will stop here. Okay. All right. Let's try that out. Let's click on animate. I got a preset location on my drive. Make sure this is set to PNG. Choose whatever, oops, I cannot select right now, but choose whatever display preset you want. Set a low resolution. If you want to see how that will look like, you have a small preview here. So for example, this can be 6 by something small, maybe like that, depending on whatever ratio you want. Or if you can click on this one, what it will do, it will take whatever resolution it is on your current viewport and set that as the resolution. But because we're doing a test render, we definitely don't want that big, right? What was this again? I think 300. That looks about okay. That's okay. We can actually zoom in a little bit on this one, and then have it update by doing, yeah, so it updates a little bit. This is a tag, which is the bottom value that you can see, whether you want to include it or not. Because it's a test render, we really don't matter that much because we're not going to be using it for the final. But if you're going to post this on or for something that other people might see except for yourself, then you might want to have this turned off for cleaner look. You might also want to set the view, the XYZ coordinate system box there off using the Rhino options. Let me see, what else can we do? Oh yeah, the frame count, we mentioned that we only want 600, so it's best to put this also to 600. And when we're all done, we can click OK, and Rhino will do its thing, and then you will see the, actually let me click OK right now. As you can see, it's now going through it, and the time remaining. So now it's saving it all there, okay. I think this will take, well, that many seconds, although I don't really see it goes up and it comes down, and it sometimes comes down, just like your typical Windows progress bar. The time it takes, it's not really the time that's stated is not really the time that's remaining. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video and then I come back when the animation is done. Okay, with the rendering now complete, what you will get is you will end up with a folder similar to this one, where you have a lot of different images, and you can actually scroll through all the images. You can see already the images combined will create the animation itself. I've actually gone ahead, so let me minimize this, and imported all those images into a into DaVinci Resolve, because that one is the free version where you're able to do a lot of these video editing. If you have Adobe Premiere, you can also use that one. I think the workflow is similar. But if you have a problem with that, do let me know, and I will try to come up with a short video explaining how I did that. But the result is actually what you see here. So if I press play, it's basically combined all the images into a video. So this is what you will get, and you can speed this up either during production, or you can do this. Now I'm using the Media Player Classic, so I can actually do control arrow up to, I think, speed up. Yeah. And then you have to wait, and then control down arrow is speed down. So this is what you'll get in the end if you do a VRay. And if you're happy with how they move, how the droplets move, we can continue on. If not, you are able to just edit some of these and see how that works, or you can, or if you're using the randomized option, well, there's very little you can do except for changing some of the randomization parameters that we have in here, the frequency and the delta height, and so on and so forth. With that being said, I think we will start the actual VRay part in the next video, where I'll start to explain how to work with, if you have not done that already, installed the VRay, it will automatically come with these. Like I said, mentioned in the very first intro, I'm using VRay 5. So if you are noticing that some of these you don't see, for example, I think this one might be new, but the components that we'll be using does already exist in the previous version of VRay, so no worries there. And that's what we're gonna do and pick up in the next video, where we'll start to lay out the components that's necessary for VRay.